much for having me. I think looking at this that I shout and looking over my notes, which is why the podium is here, that I should have reframed it sort of a Mizrahi perspective or an Oriental perspective on the politics of Israeli dance, because it is definitely a personal narrative. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, a little bit about the history of Inbal, the Mizrahi company in Israel, how I got into dance, the cultural politics within Israel itself, and dance as a cultural ambassador, which is the role it's taking on now in 10 minutes. I was born here in LA to a boy from the Bronx and a Yemenite mother, and my mother is the Margalit Oved. She was a prima ballerina of the Inbal Dance Theater Company, which was founded, for those of you who don't know, founded in 1950 by Sarah Levitanai, that's her, and all of the dancers were Yemenite. And Sarah really wanted to sort of go back and investigate her own Yemenite heritage after years of facing racism in Israel. And the company was incredibly successful, touring the world from Broadway to La Scala di Milano and to Drury Lane in London. And what was really unique, I think, about Inbal as a Mizrahi choreographer was that it was unlike most of the cultural institutions of Israel, which were transplanted from Europe. I'm talking about the Philharmonic and the Ballet Company and the Bat Sheva and the Bat Dor companies and Habima Theater. Inbal succeeded in creating a unique and indigenous language based on Yemenite roots, Israeli roots, and Jewish roots. And just sort of a perspective on my history, my mother was really a tour de force both on and off the stage, and Martha Graham, who was the great choreographer of modern dance, said about her, she never comes to the stage for me to see her, that tears do not come to my eyes. She has a power which is very, very, very special in the world. It's special wherever a great being dominated by a passion comes to the stage. That's really the sort of kudos from Martha Graham to Inbal and its endeavor. And it was actually, of course, you can imagine, interesting growing up with a person like that as your mother. In 1965, my mother arrived here to Los Angeles, where she was filming The Greatest Story Ever Told with Max von Sydow. They brought the Yemenites in to teach them how to pray like a Yemenite and to be extras, because we were apparently the most authentic representation of what biblical Jews actually looked and prayed like. That was meant as a compliment. And she met my father, they married, settled here, and my childhood was filled with dance, but I hated it. I toured throughout the United States for several years in a red school bus with hippies and homemade cheese, and spent most of my time sleeping on floors and theater floors and studio floors. And so I really couldn't stand dance at all. I'm almost done with the bio, but what occurred in 1994 was a bit of umbilical whiplash for me, which was that my mother was appointed as the artistic director of her dance company Inbal, and I, being a Zionist, wanted to move back, got a job there. Very unfortunately, within 3 months of us arriving there, my aunt, who was a second mother to me, died. And in my grief, I went into the studio every day after Shiva, would lock the door, and try to remember and implant upon my brain as many memories, words of wisdom, Yemenite sayings as I could. And I put on loud music, and I tried to expunge my grief through movement. And apparently I didn't know it, but I was dancing for the first time in my life. And every day this happened, and I didn't also know that a friend of mine was watching me from the balcony, and came down to the end of Shiva, the Shiva period, and said, I want to show you some movement. She showed me some movement. I said, it's beautiful. She said, it's yours. Let's build a piece for your aunt. So that's how I started my work in dance. So it's called Aunt Leah. And it was really a memento mori deriving on my Yemenite heritage, sayings, songs, and so on. And so for me, dance, and I think this is true of all Israeli dance, and what makes it so powerful, it's story-based, and Israelis tell stories. And I'll just quickly show you a bit of Monger, which is the piece that's coming here. And it's an upstairs, downstairs story based on Gosford Park, Jean Genet's The Maids, and several other sources. But here is a bit of Monger. So that's Inbal with Martha Graham, and that's from Monger, and here we go, sorry, Monger. That's a bit of Monger. I want to talk about the cultural politics in Israel, again from the Yemenite perspective. I take most of my movement from my Yemenite heritage and a lot of Middle Eastern sources. And when I came to Israel, I realized that there was still a great deal of cultural prejudice against Eastern cultural art, especially in the dance world, which was very surprising. And I think, from the Mizrahi perspective, one of the unfortunate byproducts of Zionism was that 1948 was our year zero. And any culture that sort of preceded that year was thrown aside. And for the most part, it was Mizrahi culture. And it's something that really still exists. And it's not spoken about, and it's offensive, but it exists, especially in the dance world. And there's a lot of powers that be that do perpetuate this. I do think it's changing right now, but this is something that I think is never spoken about, and I always think it needs to be said, because we have very rich heritages that are just thrown aside. But I also want to talk about a lot of the positive things in Israeli dance. And Israeli dance today is a powerhouse in the world of dance. There are more Israeli companies, successful Israeli choreographers per capita than anywhere else in the world. And one of the reasons is that Israelis have very opinionated opinions, are very opinionated. Thank you. But the other thing, and this is sort of the reverse side of the burden of history, or sort of my appreciation of history, is that not having a rich history, and the Israeli dance world doesn't have a very long history of ballet or modern, is that Israelis had to be more resourceful in creating new languages, and they were, and they are. And right now, just to sort of give you a perspective about how successful or how active this world is, in a country with a population that is smaller than the county of Los Angeles, you have over 20 major dance companies, you have over 50 successful freelance choreographers, and the Suzanne Dellal Center, which is the Center for Dance, has over 700 dance shows a year. So try to find the equivalent here or in the United States as a whole, and you can't find it. And so again, I really want to just say that what has actually occurred is that Israel dance has become a cultural ambassador. And the last thing I want to talk about is sort of Israel and Israeli dance and Israeli culture in Europe. Israel is subject to a cultural boycott, and I don't think it's felt any more, it's felt the most in the Israeli dance world. Big, major choreographers like Pina Bausch from Germany, Anne-Therese de Keersmacher from Belgium, and Alain Patel, also from Belgium, refused to perform in Israel. And many cultural institutions around Europe will not book Israeli choreographers. But what is a testament to the power is that you cannot go to a festival right now, almost any festival in Europe, without seeing an Israeli choreographer. And that really reflects on the power of this art form to show a positive and different side to Israel. And I'll end with one sort of story along the lines of dance as a cultural ambassador. In 1995, my company was invited to perform in Milano by a communist organization. And we showed up to the theater to find about 1,200 people wearing keffiyehs, and which was a bit daunting. When they announced that we were going on stage, the entire audience started chanting, "Intifada, Intifada, Intifada." So we kind of had to regroup, take a breath. Somebody had to clean up a little mess that she had made. And we decided to go on. And the piece begins with a song. This is Aunt Leah, the work that I started with a song in Arabic. It's Allah, and the audience shut up. The second section of the work, my mother comes out, and she plays the darbuka, and she ends the piece section with an ululation. For those of you who don't know what an ululation is. And the audience starts ululating. In the third section, we use sayings from my aunt, words of wisdom, curses like Ya Sharmuta, and the audience starts laughing. And in the fourth section, I used a piece of music by Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, and who was a Pakistani Sufi singer, and the entire audience started dancing in the aisles and rushed the stage to hug us at the end of it. So that's the power of Israeli dance, I think, in general. And I just want to sort of end on the note that what I think is so wonderful about Israeli dance is that it does have the power to transcend politics, and it's doing it every day. So thank you very much.